February 11th, 1980. A screening room on the lot of a major American studio in Burbank, California. The projector had been running for 47 minutes. The lights came up, 3 men in the room, a development executive, a distribution VP, and a junior creative who had been brought along to take notes, sat in silence for a moment that lasted slightly too long. On the screen behind them, frozen on the final frame, a 25-year-old Chinese man midair, fists out, grinning. The film was The Young Master. It had just been released in Hong Kong to enormous box office numbers. The junior creative had seen it twice already in a theater in Chinatown and had spent the last 2 weeks trying to get these men in the same room with it. The distribution VP spoke first. "He's no Bruce Lee." The executive agreed. The junior creative wrote it down. What nobody in that room understood yet, what would take the entire American film industry another 15 years to understand, was that the sentence they had just spoken as a dismissal was, in fact, the single most important thing about Jackie Chan. He was not Bruce Lee. He had never been Bruce Lee. And the long, grinding, humiliating process of America figuring that out is one of the stranger stories in the history of popular cinema. To understand how Hollywood got this so wrong, for so long, you need to understand what happened the last time a martial arts star arrived on American screens. Bruce Lee died on July 20th, 1973. He was 32 years old. Enter the Dragon, the film that was supposed to be his American breakthrough, opened 3 weeks later and became one of the highest-grossing films of the year. He never saw it. The appetite the film created had no one to feed it. Hollywood had stumbled onto a global audience for Hong Kong-style martial arts cinema and then immediately lost the one performer that audience had organized itself around. What followed was a decade of searching, frantic, often cynical, frequently embarrassing. The studios wanted the next Bruce Lee. The Hong Kong studios wanted to sell them one. For that reason, almost every martial arts performer in Hong Kong during the 1970s was at some point held up and examined for Bruce Lee-ness, the intensity, the coiled spring anger, the single-name mystique, the physical perfection that suggested menace rather than comedy. The screen presence of a man who made audiences believe he was genuinely dangerous, not performing danger. This is the post-Bruce Lee vacuum, and it shaped everything. It shaped which films got made, which performers got pushed, and in a way that would take years to unwind, what American audiences were taught to want from Asian action cinema. A young stuntman from the China Drama Academy, who had worked as a bit player and stunt extra on 2 of Bruce Lee's actual films, was about to be fitted into that vacancy, and the fit was going to be catastrophic. Here is what is documented. Chan Kong-sang entered the China Drama Academy run by Master Yu Jim-yuen around 1961 when he was approximately 7 years old. He trained there for roughly a decade. Acrobatics, Peking opera, martial arts, performance, sleeping 4 to 5 hours a night on a thin mat in a room with a dozen other children, waking before dawn to train in a Hong Kong winter that offered no heat and a Hong Kong summer that offered no escape from it. The physical discipline of the school included corporal punishment as a standard feature, not an aberration. He left around 1971. He was 17. By 1972, he was working as a stuntman on Hong Kong film sets. He appeared as a bit player in Fist of Fury, one of Bruce Lee's films. In Enter the Dragon the following year, he can be seen briefly, if you know where to look, in a fight sequence. He was not yet Jackie Chan in any commercially meaningful sense. He was a trained body available for work that other people did not want to do. In the years immediately after Bruce Lee's death, a producer named Lo Wei signed him to a contract. Lo Wei had a theory. The next Bruce Lee was attainable. You simply needed the right raw material and the right pressure. Chan Kong-sang was the raw material. The films that followed, New Fist of Fury in 1976, Shaolin Wooden Men that same year, To Kill with Intrigue in 1977, were the pressure. They performed poorly, not just modestly, poorly. Audiences could see the seams. Here was a young man who was physically extraordinary. Clearly the things his body did on screen were not normal, but he was also funny in an unguarded way. prone to expressions of confusion and pain and sheepishness that broke the Bruce Lee spell instantly. You cannot do what Bruce Lee did and grin at the camera. The grin was disqualifying. Lo Wei's assessment of this problem was straightforward. The grin needed to go. The humor needed to be suppressed. Jackie Chan needed to become serious, contained, magnetic in the particular way that Bruce Lee had been magnetic. The audience would follow if the performer committed. What Lo Wei did not understand, what the entire industry would spend the better part of 2 decades failing to understand, was that the grin was not a problem. The grin was the gift. I want to tell you something about my reaction when I first started mapping the timeline of Jackie Chan's American rejections. I expected a story about racism, about an industry that didn't know how to market an Asian face. And that story is real. It is absolutely part of what happened, but it is not the complete story. The complete story is stranger and more specific than that. Hollywood didn't reject Jackie Chan because he was Asian. Hollywood rejected him because he was the wrong kind of Asian action star. They had a template. He didn't fit the template, and they kept pressing him against the template for years, like a key against a lock, wondering why it wouldn't turn. The tragedy is that by the time they finally figured it out, he had already spent 15 years doing the thing they couldn't see right in front of them. The reinvention, when it came, did not come from Hollywood. It came from a director named Yuan Wu-ping and a production company called Seasonal Films that was willing to let Chan Kong-sang be whatever he actually was, rather than a diminished photocopy of someone else. Snake in the Eagle's Shadow was released in February 1978. Drunken Master followed in October of the same year, having been shot in the months just before. Both films were directed by Yuan Wu-ping. Both films were built around a specific insight: that Jackie Chan's comedy and Jackie Chan's physicality were not in tension with each other, they were the same thing. The humor came from the body, the pain was funny, the falls were funny, the expressions of genuine alarm that crossed his face mid-stunt were funny. None of that required suppression. All of it required amplification. Drunken Master grossed more in Hong Kong than any film that year except one. Jackie Chan was 24. He was, suddenly and completely, a star, but a specific kind of star, a new kind of star, a kind the template had no place for. The screening rooms in Burbank kept calling him the wrong name. His first actual attempt at an American film came in 1980. The Big Brawl, directed by Robert Clouse, the same Robert Clouse who had directed Enter the Dragon. The studio logic was elegant in its wrong-headedness. Use the same director, use the same format, find a new Lee. Jackie Chan was 26. He was contractually cooperative and privately miserable. The fight choreography had been redesigned to look more American, which meant slower and more theatrical, which meant less like anything he actually did. The film performed adequately in limited release and disappeared. In 1985, he tried again. The Protector, this time. New director, same problem. American producers kept insisting on a version of Jackie Chan that had the word dangerous written in large letters and the word funny crossed out. He finished the American version of the film, then went back and shot an entirely different version for Asian markets, faster, more physical, more himself, that performed significantly better. 2 versions of the same film, 2 different stars in the same body, only one of them actually Jackie Chan. His autobiography, published in 1998, is direct about this period. The American market wanted something he was not, and he spent years trying to decide whether to keep trying to give it to them. Here is where I want to be honest with you about the limits of what I can say with certainty. The internal conversations at American studios during this period, what executives actually said about Jackie Chan in rooms where decisions were made. Those conversations were not recorded in ways that made it to the public record. What I have are the outcomes. Films that got made a certain way, distribution deals that fell through, American release dates that never materialized for films that were breaking records in Asia. The pattern is clear. The specific words behind the pattern are mostly gone. There is one account from someone who worked at a major studio in the early 1980s and has since spoken about it in interviews, that describes a conversation in which a senior executive said, "In essence, American audiences will not follow an action hero who hurts himself. The hero is supposed to be invulnerable. That's the contract. Every time Jackie Chan winces or stumbles or looks surprised by the damage his body is taking, he's breaking the contract. He's reminding the audience that they're watching a person and not a symbol, and American action cinema doesn't want a person, it wants a symbol." I've turned that account over a number of times, and I am not sure it's entirely wrong, even as a description of what the studios believed. The extraordinary thing is that it was also entirely backward. The wince was why audiences loved him. The pain was the point. The contract he was offering was a different contract, not invulnerability, but defiant vulnerability. Come watch a real man refuse to stop. That was the show. There is a stunt at the end of Police Story, Jackie Chan's 1985 Hong Kong film, that involves a pole wrapped in electrical lights above a shopping mall atrium in Sun Wan. He slides down the pole. The lights burn his hands. The impact at the bottom dislocates his pelvis. He does the stunt, and then he does it again until the shot is right, and the footage captures something extraordinary, a man in visible pain choosing, on camera, to continue, not because he is superhuman, precisely because he is not. Police Story was not released in American theaters. The American market had passed on it. While that film was burning Jackie Chan's hands in Hong Kong, the American studios that had already turned down his previous attempts at crossover were busy developing action films featuring performers who did not do their own stunts, whose bodies remained theoretically intact, whose invulnerability was the entire premise of their commercial value. The market had spoken, they believed. This was what audiences wanted. It is worth sitting with the specifics of that gap for a moment. In 1985, the most audacious piece of practical stunt filmmaking produced anywhere in the world was something the American market didn't know how to sell. A man burning his hands on a pole was not, by their calculation, a feature. It was a liability. The conversation I want you to hold in your mind for the next few minutes happens in 1994. A producer named Raymond Chow, one of the architects of Hong Kong cinema's golden era, is sitting across from a development executive at a studio and making, one more time, the case for Jackie Chan in the American market. The meeting has happened in various forms before. The answer has been the same before. This time, Chow brings footage. Specifically, footage of Jackie Chan breaking his ankle during the production of Rumble in the Bronx, which would shoot the following year in Vancouver. The ankle breaks and Jackie Chan finishes the scene. Then he tapes up the ankle and comes back the next day and finishes the movie, the cast on his ankle painted to match the color of his shoe so the fracture wouldn't be visible on screen. The footage, the decision, the painted cast, the continuing, is not supposed to be the selling point. The film is supposed to be the selling point. But something about that specific detail lands in the room differently than anything else has. He finished the movie, the executive says. He always finishes, Chow says. The meeting ends differently than the previous meetings had ended. I want to stop here and ask you something directly, because there are two ways to understand what just happened in that room, and I cannot decide which one I believe. The first version, the American market finally understood Jackie Chan because it finally saw evidence of the thing he had always been, a person who did the impossible thing anyway, defiant physical commitment in the face of real damage. Once that was made undeniable, once there was footage of a man finishing a film on a broken ankle, the argument clicked into place. The second version, Hollywood did not learn anything. It encountered a Jackie Chan whose body had already absorbed 40 years of punishment and whose commercial viability had already been proven beyond doubt in every market except theirs, and it reached for the nearest available frame, the stoic action hero, the man who doesn't stop, and decided he fitted after all, not because he had changed, because the frame had shifted enough to let him in. Under a different frame, with a different set of assumptions, he would still be outside the room. The story is not about discovery, it's about timing. Tell me which one lands for you. Leave it in the comments. I read them. On this particular question, I have been genuinely going back and forth for weeks. Rumble in the Bronx opened in North American theaters in February 1996. It was #1 at the box office that weekend. The film had been shot in Vancouver, dressed to look like New York, the mountains occasionally visible in background shots, the geographical fiction slightly transparent to anyone paying attention. None of that mattered. Audiences did not care about the mountains. Audiences cared about a man jumping from the roof of a parking garage onto a moving hovercraft, a man doing that stunt in the first place, and the electric specific sensation of watching someone perform something you know cannot be faked. Rush Hour followed in 1998. $33 million opening weekend, his biggest American number to that point by a significant margin. Jackie Chan was 44 years old. He had been in the film industry for 26 years. He had been told in various rooms in various ways that the American market was not the right home for what he did. He had been pressed against the Bruce Lee template so many times that a lesser person would have accepted the shape. "I never wanted to be the next Bruce Lee," he said, in an interview around this period, in his autobiography, and in enough documented contexts that the sentence has become the most quoted thing he ever said. "I just wanted to be the first Jackie Chan." What strikes me looking at that sentence now is the patience it contains. Not bitterness, not triumph, just a very quiet statement of something that had always been true, delivered after 20+ years of the world arguing with him about it. Go back now to that screening room in Burbank in 1980. 3 men, a film frozen on its final frame, a young man midair, fists out, grinning. The distribution VP speaking. "He's no Bruce Lee. The thing I keep turning over is this. That assessment was correct. Completely, precisely correct. He was not Bruce Lee. Had never been Bruce Lee. Would never be Bruce Lee. Every frame of every film he had made since leaving the low-wage contract had been at great physical cost, a demonstration of that exact fact. The grin was proof, the pain was proof, the way he looked at the camera with genuine surprise when his body did something extraordinary, as if he was watching himself from a slight distance, charmed and alarmed in equal measure, was proof. The men in that room saw the grin and concluded, not Bruce Lee, therefore not commercially viable. They wrote it down. They moved on. They were reading the evidence correctly and drawing exactly the wrong conclusion from it. The grin was not the absence of commercial viability. The grin was the thing itself. The problem was not with Jackie Chan. The problem was with the only frame those men had available to them, a frame built around a dead man, a frame that had calcified in the years since his death into something close to law. Jackie Chan did not break that frame. He did not argue against it, did not campaign against it, did not spend his years in the wilderness writing angry letters about it. He simply kept doing what he did, kept burning his hands and dislocating his pelvis and breaking his ankle and finishing the movie until the frame couldn't hold anymore, until the weight of evidence got too heavy for the template to carry. 15 years, something like 9 rejections by the accounting of people who were present for the decisions. 9 times a screening room full of men decided that the most technically gifted physical comedian and stunt performer alive was not quite right for their market. What strikes me is not that they were wrong. People are wrong about things. Industries have blind spots. Templates resist replacement. What strikes me is what he did in those 15 years. Not waiting, working, making Police Story and burning his hands, making Armor of God in Yugoslavia in 1986, and fracturing his skull, a piece of bone entering his brain, a permanent hole in his skull covered now by a plastic plug, a near-death experience that required emergency surgery in a country where he barely spoke the language, making film after film in which he put his body through things that should not have been survived, let alone filmed, let alone done again from a different angle to get the coverage right. And through all of it, the broken bones, the foreign screening rooms, the verdict delivered so many times it should have become inevitable. He was building something that didn't require American approval to be real. He was building it anyway, in Hong Kong first, then across Asia, then across the parts of the world the American studios weren't paying attention to. A body of work that, by the time the frame finally shifted, was so large and so undeniable that even a screening room in Burbank couldn't argue with it anymore. The 9 rejections are the part of the story everyone knows, or rather, everyone knows the Hollywood breakthrough. Fewer people know how many times the door was shut before it opened. But here is what I think the rejections actually tell us, which is not what they appear to tell us at first glance. They are not a story about an industry's failure to recognize talent. They are not even primarily a story about racism, though racism was present and structural and real. They are a story about the limits of templates, about what happens when an industry builds its entire evaluative framework around a single example and then tries to use that framework to assess everything that comes after. Bruce Lee was extraordinary. The template built around his memory was a cage. The tragedy is that almost everyone who got pressed against that template was diminished by it, forced into poses that didn't fit them, asked to be a copy of something that couldn't be copied. Most of them broke against it. Jackie Chan didn't break against it. He waited and worked and grinned at the camera and kept finishing the movie. And when the frame finally cracked, when the weight of his actual body of work became heavier than the ghost of someone else's legacy, the thing that came through was exactly what it had always been. Not the next Bruce Lee, not a compromise, not a translation for American audiences, just the first Jackie Chan, right where he had always been, waiting for the room to catch up.